Before we do start the show today, I do want to give just a moment of silence before we do start the show. For you guys that aren't, you didn't see this week, a Pistons coach did pass away, Brendan Malone. So before we do start the podcast, we just want to give a moment of silence to Brendan Malone. All right. Well, I know you want to really get into this preseason stuff, so I'm going to let you take the floor and do your thing. Because I didn't really get to watch too much because StreamYard sucks. Or not StreamYard, StreamEast sucks.
Oh, you don't have a Valley Sports account anymore?
No, I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, I got mine. It still works. I'm able to watch the preseason. I'm sure I'm going to have to re-up on the account here, the subscription, here any day now. But for now, I'm getting these games. It would suck if they're just teasing you with preseason, and then as soon as regular season hits, you get hit with a fat bill, which I kind of expect to happen. But preseason number 2, Pistons won. It was an awesome game. Even though it was preseason, they came back from about 20. I believe they were down 21. I believe the final score was 128 to 125. Just some great performances. 6 Pistons were in double figures. James Wiseman had 20 and 10 with 8 for 8 from the field. But as we were talking pre-production, he was being defended by 6'5" guards. So don't take too much of that. Be like, oh, look at James Wiseman. It's crazy. Jaden Ivey, another performance off the bench. He had 13, 4 and 3 with 1 steal. I kind of felt like he took a lot of threes in this game. He did take 6 of them. But one thing I noted was just how much pressure he was putting on the rim on his drives. I mean, man, he was getting to the rim. Didn't matter if Chet Holmgren was on the floor or not. He was looking to attack. Asar Thompson, he did foul out in this game, but I think he got his 5th foul in the 3rd quarter and played well into the 4th. And just some of the defense he was applying, especially on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I don't know if you saw this in the 1st quarter, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I believe he made All-NBA first team last year. And he was locked up on a couple of possessions by Asar Thompson. And that defense is just incredible. I feel like some of those fouls were a little ticky-tacky, and as he grows more as an NBA player, they won't be called fouls. He'll get the benefit of the doubt from the referee, but since he is a rookie, he was getting into a little bit of foul trouble. Killian Hayes, he had another good performance, man. 16 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds, 1 steal. He went 7 for 13 from the field. He played with a lot of confidence shooting the ball. I felt like at one point he was really hunting for his shot, but it got no traction on Twitter. And there were just a lot of people praising him. And I went back and actually watched a little of this game, and they were good shots. His form looks a little bit more solid. Like I said, the confidence was there. I felt like he faded back a lot, though, on some of his jumpers, considering the fact that he is 6'5", and he has great size for that point guard position. But overall, it was a great performance. I mean, Marcus Sasser, how can I forget him? He just played phenomenally in this game. And, dude, you might be right. He might be getting minutes day one if he continues to string together these type of performances, and not even just stats-wise, but the energy he's playing with, continue to attack the rim, get after it defensively, take the shots when they're given to you, and just play with poise. That's what he did. Stanley Amude, I mean, I love to say this, but I also hate to say it. I think he took Isaiah Liver's spot. He just looks incredible, man. I mean, I'm not saying he's a starter on this team, but as a role player and what he gives you game in and game out, from the hustle, the intensity, and just, oh, thank you. Yeah, Alan, you're right. I agree with you. And dude, the shooting, he only missed 1 3, but every time he shot it, I thought it was going in. That's how well he shot the ball. And yeah, I really don't have much more to say about that. I was impressed with James Wiseman offensively. I still think that backup big spot, it's still up for grabs. I do think Marvin Bagley is leading the race. My only concern with James Wiseman is he looks so lost defensively still. Like, he did not look engaged on the defensive side. And it's such a damn shame, too, because of all that size and athleticism and that length and everything. You really wish he would be engaged, but I think his offense will always keep him in the NBA as long as he wants a job. It's just the offense isn't good enough to outweigh the poor defense. So those are my thoughts on preseason game 2, man. A lot of positives, not too many negatives, but do you have any thoughts on it? The little thing you got to watch?
I kind of just want to do a quick recap of like each individual player, but before I do that, the Pistons social media team, they got to work on their captions because I don't know if anyone saw, they used Asar Thompson as a final score graphic and they put brick by brick and the guy shot 2 for 10 out of the field and they deleted the tweet. So Pistons, you got to do a better job with your captions. We all saw the tweet, you deleted it, but just wanted to get that off there because if you're on Twitter and you saw that, you probably got a good laugh like me. But speaking of Asar, he did struggle to shoot the ball, but I think you had mentioned it a little while ago. He did have 5 fouls going into the third quarter, and he didn't foul out into pretty much like I think like midway through the fourth quarter. He still had 8 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 blocks. He's going to stuff the stat sheet this season. Even within 2 preseason games and some early games, I think we can get accustomed to him just stuffing the stat sheet. And maybe he's a fantasy sleeper for you guys out there that are fantasy nuts. I liked what I saw from Asar. Isaiah Stewart, in a short amount of time, going up against Chet Holmgren, he had a post move that I absolutely loved. He finished with 12 and 7 and 2 assists. Liked what I saw from him. He seemed a little bit more under control in this game versus the game versus I want to say it was the Suns, if I do remember correctly. Bagley did his thing also, 9 and 7 against a shot blocker that I think is going to get more respect around the NBA, even though it is his rookie season. 9 and 7 against Holmgren is impressive. Killian Hayes, back-to-back preseason games where he looks great. He just looks like he's more confident. He's taking every opportunity, finishing with 16 points in 26 minutes and 3 assists. I like when he's aggressive. And he had a couple of shots where it's just like, wow, okay. And he had this one off glass that was an and one that I was just like, man, how did he make that? Because he's like switched hands midway, but was really impressed with the starters. Jaden Ivey, again, second preseason game, he's off the bench, and that's probably going to be the main focus of this podcast tonight is, is he going to, come off the bench for the rest of the season? But we'll get into that later in the show. Looked great, had 13 points. Wiseman, I feel like was kind of like the star of that game, especially, coming in, didn't miss a shot, 20 points, 10 rebounds. Now, granted, it was against, the OKC's bench players, and OKC played small the second half of that game because they were up 20. Why not? It's preseason. You're going to try some stuff, experiment. But I'm not knocking James Wiseman. I'm happy that he had 20 and 10. He didn't miss a shot. You got to get that confidence up, and he got his reps in. So happy for him on that. To me, I thought he was the MVP of that. Him and Marcus Sasser, in my opinion, were the MVPs up that second half rally. And Stanley Amude, by the way. Joe Harris, 6 points, just did his thing. Sasser, holy crap. I think we both talked about it when we drafted him, when the Pistons drafted him, that this could be a guy that could play point guard, could play shooting guard. I think his defense, to me, is way ahead of what a rookie should be able to defend coming into the NBA. But you do have to remember, he did play college basketball for 4 years, so he's going to have a little bit more experience on that end of the floor. But to have 17 points, 5 rebounds, and be a floor general out there, 8 assists, and just hit some really big-time shots down the stretch and just make some winning plays, extremely happy that Troy decided to trade up for Marcus Sasser. I think he's just going to be a gamer. And I think he's going to get minutes this season. It might not be a lot to start the season, but he's going to get minutes because he's just going to be a spark plug out there. And I'm really happy that he had a good game. And I'll leave it with Stanley Amude. And Alan had asked the question, and I think we're gonna answer it right now. 18 points, back-to-back games where he's making clutch plays when the game's close. We talked about him a little bit last year. I told you he could be a guy that the Pistons maybe look to sign next year. The Pistons have one available two-way spot. They haven't used that third two-way spot. I think he gets it, but I think the bigger question is, could he take Isaiah Livers' spot if Isaiah Livers can't stay healthy? I know it's very premature and it's very early. Livers is going to be out until December. But Amude just makes big time three pointers, makes the right pass, can switch defensively. He's not a lockdown defender by any means, but he's serviceable for what he's getting paid. My opinion is I think they gave him the third two way, but I want to hear your thoughts on just Stanley Amude, just the first two preseason games. And do you think down the line the Pistons might have to make a tough decision between him and Isaiah Livers?
No, I think he has Isaiah Livers' spot, man. And that pains me. But he's so good for who he is. He could probably defend positions 1 through 3. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Wesley Matthews, who I believe also went undrafted and didn't get an opportunity to, like, I don't know, maybe his second year in the NBA. And I don't know, when I watch Stanley Amude play, I just feel like there's more to his game and we haven't seen it yet, but the shooting looks real. The defense is solid. The hustle, the intensity, just that kind of dog about him where, he wasn't given an opportunity right away and he wants to make the most of it. And that means something and that can really inspire a team. And
Mhm.
I agree with you. I think he gets the two-way spot, man. He's a guy now that when I'm watching the preseason games, I want him to get in early and I want him to play often. That's how much of a fan I've become of his.
Yeah, like I had the privilege of watching a lot of Motor City Cruise games because that is my job. For people that don't know, I work for a broadcast company and we do broadcast the Motor City Cruise home games because they do play at Wayne State. It's so funny because you would think a player like Stanley Amude started. Guess what? He didn't. He came off the bench for the Cruise and he was one of the leaders off the bench. He can hit clutch 3-point shots. It's just kind of his bread and butter. One part of his game that I think I want to see him work on is getting to the basket a little bit more because I think he has the body and the skill set to do it. But you can't argue with the results of him just coming in. He's just instant offense, instant impact. I mean, you look at his plus minus through just 2 preseason games and it's off the charts. Like, I want him to get that third two-way spot because I think he's earned it. Nothing against Jared Roden, nothing against Malcolm Kazalon. I just think he's actually earned a two-way spot this preseason so far. In my personal opinion, it's just every time he's out there, he's doing something that's positive in the win column for the Pistons.
The only crazy thing is there's 2 little fun facts about him. He played 5 years of college basketball, 4 at South Dakota, 1 at Arkansas, and he's a fan of the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, who was the player last year that was high-fiving after the game? I'm forgetting his. I can't
Oh,
believe I'm
Eugene
forgetting.
Amarui?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I hope we don't ever see that from Stanley Amude. We're just high-fiving, even though he doesn't have any
Yeah.
connection to them, but he just happens to be a fan. But yeah, like I said earlier, I'm just a huge fan of Stanley Amude, and I would love to see him make this team on a two-way or even just getting that final roster spot, like a guaranteed deal. I think after 2 preseason games, he would be the guy that has, like you said, earned it. And he deserves it, man.
He really does. Like, even if you give him a two-way, I mean, he could this still be an emergency provision down the line. But I mean, I think with his play, he's earned it personally. He really has. I know he did get called up last season with the Pistons, but he only got to shoot a free throw. He didn't really get to do too much. But um, I think Monty Williams values defense a lot. And if you play both ends of the floor, you're going to get playing time. And I think he's really leaned on him heavily so far in the preseason.
Dude, he's a legit NBA player. He is a legit NBA player. If the Pistons don't sign him, he'll end up on another team. That's just what it feels like with Stanley Amude. He's going to be good.
Okay.
So you have a clip to play for us from head coach Monty Williams. So let's get into that.
All right, here it comes. I want to give some context before we do jump into this. Uh, he kind of hinted who the starting center might be on the Pistons. So this clip is from Mike Curtis. So shout out to him.
I mean, there's a combination of things: the skill set, the fit with certain guys on the floor that could be in the starting lineup, conversations with everybody here, and in particular Troy, and then just you look at the numbers and the production, and there's probably a few more things that go into it. And then watching them play when I was here in the preseason, you could just see there's some things there with him that are, a bit different than a lot of bigger players that can play that spot. I don't want to name names around the league or from the past that he reminds me of, because I think he's his own player, but he has combinations of certain skill sets that a lot of bigs don't have. And from that standpoint, that allowed for me to make that decision.
So obviously he hasn't said I'm going to name Jalen Duren as a starting center, but he kind of hinted I'm going to name Jalen Duren as a starting center. So I know we're not surprised by this at all.
Yeah, I think if you're surprised, you're only fooling yourself if you thought any other James Wiseman or Marvin Bagley were going to be named a starter over him. I know there's some fans. There's a very, very, very small minority of fans that thought Jalen Duren would come off the bench for the Detroit Pistons. I really do, though, wish he had named guys who he had compared Jalen Duren to, because I want to have a better NBA comparison, because the body, the athleticism does remind you of Dwight Howard, but the way we've seen him bring the ball up in a summer league game. We've seen him play out to the three-point line in a preseason game where you kind of think of like Bam Adebayo or even someone like a Chris Webber type, where there's the passing ability and there's a lot of fluidness to his game. I just wish Monty Williams had talked more about how he envisions Jalen Duren playing in the NBA, who he compares him to, and how he can use him more offensively. Because we've kind of heard a little bit about what they want to see from him defensively, but we don't get enough of it on the offensive side. Like I just hope they don't use him just as like a rim roller and someone that they just throw lobs to. I want to see more from Jalen Duren on the offensive side.
Yeah, I agree with you. In terms of like comparisons, like real quick, I've heard Dwayne Casey throw out Sean Kemp, who's a throwback. If you don't know who Sean Kemp is, go YouTube his highlights. Athletic freak. I've heard Dwight Howard, not only from you, but from respected guys in the NBA that do draft analysis. I've heard Dwight Howard. I've heard Andre Drummond with some Pistons fans, and I hate that comparison. I really do, because I don't think they're the same type of player at all. I think he's got a little bit of Dwight in him. He's got that mid-range game that we haven't seen a whole lot, but I know there's something there. Like you kind of see a little bit of Rasheed Wallace in there, and that's to be expected because Rasheed was coaching him at Memphis for a year with Larry Brown and Penny Hardaway. So Rasheed probably taught him some, stuff in the post, because Rasheed is just such a smart basketball mind. But to your point, I think they are going to use him in a lot of dribble handoffs. I think you saw it in the first preseason game, and that is something where I love that for him. I don't really like the double dribble handoffs with him and Isaiah Stewart. I wish they would stop that. I wish they would just kind of rely on Duren to be that center to set a pick and kind of set up your DHO offense. But hey, I'm not a coach, but it's just something I wish they would stop, because I think Duren's a gifted enough passer to where you can just have Isaiah Stewart. Maybe he's in the corner for three. Maybe Duren's like way out the top of the key and Stewart's in the post. But for me, I think he does deserve to be the starting center. He's the most athletically gifted. It's just with him, he's kind of following under the same lines as a lot of the Pistons on this roster. It's health. And it's always his ankle. And I think it's the shoes he's wearing personally. I think he's got to stop wearing Giannis Nikes, because if you've ever wore a pair of Giannis Nikes, or let alone played basketball in them, they have no ankle support. They feel like new Kobe's, not old Kobe's. Like, there's no ankle support. You roll your ankle if you twist your ankle the wrong way. You need some more impact and more ankle support, in my personal opinion. But other than that, I'm happy that he's probably going to be named the starting center. But I do agree with you. I do hope that they use him in more offensive actions, and just I don't want him to be like a Clint Capella,
Yeah.
because I know there's something more there with him. I know that he has the ability to knock down a 12 to 15-foot shot. I know that, around 3 to 5 feet, that ball's going in. But, he's still 19, I believe. Like, that's crazy to think about. Like, Sar Thompson's older than Jalen Duren, and we just drafted a Sar. But I know I'm rambling a little bit, but
No, I was thinking of another name, Alonzo Mourning, to compare him to. Like old Alonzo Mourning with the Charlotte Hornets before he went to the Miami Heat. He's a little bit more athletic. And also, you're talking about his ankles. He needs to do the Steph Curry workouts. Remember when Steph Curry's ankles were bothering him, and some people thought they would keep him out of the league in reaching his potential, and then he became a unanimous MVP? Jalen Duren, jump on the Steph Curry workouts. I agree with you, though. I do think there's more to Jalen Duren's game, and I do not want to see him being used like a Clint Capella or a Tyson Chandler or or a Dwight Powell. I don't want to see that. I want to see him evolve into the player and try and get as close to his ceiling as we think it is. Like, if you're talking about him as a top 10 player and not just a top 10 center, you need to put him in the best position to reach those heights, because there's just so much talent coming from this guy. And man, I just hope he sees it in Detroit, man. I really do.
yeah, it's just, there's so much potential there with him, and I think a lot of Pistons fans see that. We see the potential. Like, when we see a basketball player, we know that he's special, and I think he has all the tools to be a two-way player in this league, like, where he can get you, 15 and 12 and block a few shots. And Monty Williams has even said he thinks that Duren can not only be a top 10 center, but a top 10 player in the league. Like, coaches just don't come in and say stuff like that unless they see something there in him. And I think Monty just sees so much potential in him to be an absolute force in this league. And I think that's, like, to your point, like, you want to see him more than just be like a Clint Capella type, or like a Dwight Howard later in his career type of just setting screens and catching lobs and blocking shots, because he's just got a game to where it leaves you wanting more every time you watch him.
Oh, 100%. So Duren, he sprained his ankle against the Phoenix Suns. He missed his first matchup with Chet Holmgren when they played Oklahoma City. Not sure when the timetable or when his return is going to be. I know the Pistons play Oklahoma City again this Thursday for their third preseason game. I don't know if he'll be a part of it. And it wasn't even, he didn't run into anybody. I think he was going for the ball out on the outs, like he was near past the 3-point line and near the sideline. And I know it says sprained, but it wasn't a collision with any player. He didn't come down on it. Just seemed kind of like a freak accident. And that sucks, because he joins a very, I don't want to call it a long list, but it's a medium list of players that have been out for the Pistons so far. And it's getting a little concerning.
Yeah, so James Edwards actually had an update. I believe it was yesterday with Duren, and he tweeted that Duren returned to practice yesterday.
Okay.
And some people open practice saying that he looked fine. Him and Cade Cunningham, by the way, did look fine. So, Organic Lindo said that, or it wasn't Organic Lindo, it was Alan actually, saying that he kind of landed funny on a dunk against Phoenix, where his ankle kind of, yeah, I mean, it just like a freak accident. I think everyone on the team outside of Isaiah Livers is going to be 100% healthy to start the season. But I don't really think it's anything we need to really be concerned about right now. They're just going really hard in practice, and preseason they're not really going all out 100% of the time. So I'm not really too worried about it.
It's funny because I actually bookmarked James Edwards' tweet that talked about Jalen Duren returning. Yeah, the only clip I saw of Jalen Duren, I didn't see him roll his ankle on a dunk when he was coming down. I saw where he was going for the ball out by the 3-point line. That's one that someone had highlighted. But I mean, either way, I'm glad that he's back and he's healthy. And it seemed like him missing that first game against Oklahoma City was more of a precautionary thing. Same thing I felt like with Cade. I don't feel like the Cade injury is really that serious. Do you think we'll see Jalen Duren, though, in preseason game number 3?
So they play the Thunder again, which good, because I hope Chet's playing.
Yeah.
I would assume he's good to go because they don't play until, I want to say, Thursday or Friday. I don't have the preseason schedule pulled up right in front of me. But yeah, I think he'll be good to go for the last 2 preseason games this week. We play OKC in Dallas. By the way, this is completely random. How the fuck do we get a back-to-back in the preseason?
I have no idea.
What the hell? Like, really? How does that happen?
Well, you got to get used to the regular season, and back-to-backs are part of it. So let them have one in the preseason.
Excuse my language, by the way. Like, that just pissed me off when I saw that, because I saw how many back-to-backs we have this season. I was like, yeah, let's just get them started.
Yeah, isn't there like 15 back-to-backs for the Pistons on the regular season? I'm not sure, but
yeah, it's like NBA's like, we want to make sure the players are well rested. Let's give them a back-to-back.
Like, oh, look at the Pistons. Most of their guys are under the age of 24. They can have a lot of back-to-backs. There was one, I forget who tweeted it out. It might have been Mike Curtis or Omari Sankoff. I'm not sure. But they did give an update on Isaiah Livers, and I believe they said late November is when he'll possibly return back from his ankle.
Yeah, his boot's already off. So I think Mike Curtis had posted a video of him handling the basketball better than Jaylen Brown. So that was pretty cool.
If you had to make a bet on who returns first, Aaron Rodgers or Isaiah Livers, who would you take? Because, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is out of the boot already throwing footballs, and he just ripped his Achilles tendon. If Aaron Rodgers comes back before Isaiah Livers, I don't even know what I would do. It would just blow my mind if something like that happened. I know no Detroit fans want to see that, but still, it's pretty impressive that Aaron Rodgers is already thrown a football.
Yeah, I think you got a better chance of Tom Brady coming out of retirement before those 2 guys come back.
Yeah, maybe. All right, let's get into this, man. We got some topics on. Let's talk about probably the biggest thing. It's the most controversial. From last week, we had a controversial quote from Monty Williams, and this week we have a controversial decision by Monty Williams, and that decision was to bring Jaden Ivey off the bench. It's only preseason, a time where teams figure out lineups and rotations, so maybe we can all just chill. But I'll be honest, I don't hate the move at all for him to bring Jaden Ivey off the bench. I think this is, right now, is the perfect role for Jaden Ivey. I think it's the best way for him to grow. I know we all want to see him play off of Cade Cunningham. We will do that. I don't, as long as he still plays close to 30 minutes per game, it's not an issue for me with Jaden Ivey. You've heard me talk on this podcast where I feel like sometimes he would try to play too much hero ball and try to take the defense on his own. He did have 5 turnovers in the last game, and we did see him try to rush things a little bit. I think playing next alongside someone like Monte Morris off the bench who can control the pace, get him to slow things down, it's going to be better growth for Jaden Ivey. But what are your thoughts of him coming off the bench for the Detroit Pistons?
My initial reaction before I heard Monty Williams talk to the media was I was surprised by it. But then he added context to it, saying, hey, I don't want to throw out 5 young guys onto the basketball on a basketball floor without a veteran out there. And that veteran happened to be Alec Burks. So I was like, okay, he had some context to it. I don't think he's trying to send a message to Jaden Ivey, because I have seen some Pistons fans talk about that. Like maybe he's sending a message because Jaden Ivey isn't a good defender. I don't think it's that. I think in the preseason, you get the opportunity to run sets and run starting lineups, rotations that you don't get to do in the regular season, because you're trying to win basketball games. Every team in the NBA is trying to win basketball games in the beginning of the year. They're not, trying to tank, or, we're gonna try this experiment lineup down the stretch in the third quarter. I think Monty is seeing if Jaden Ivey can fit off that bench, and he's done a really good job the first two preseason games, just instant offense, and he's trying on defense. Not to saying that he's just out there. He's not pulling a Zion. I don't know if you've watched Zion lately. He's just letting guys blow right by him and not even like putting a hand up or anything. He's actually trying out there. It's just interesting to me that you wouldn't want him and Cade to try to build that chemistry. But again, it is the preseason. Maybe they can build that chemistry to start the season, and maybe they're in practice. They're on the same team. Who knows? I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. I know some people, Pistons fans on Twitter just lost their shit. Like Pistons Twitter has been so toxic.
It's been fun.
Oh
my,
it's been fun. But between Pistons Twitter, Facebook groups, man, I've never seen Pistons fans so on edge. Like, I know we've lost a lot, but some of the stuff that is just coming out of Pistons fans' mouth, man, like I can't even reply to half of it because it's just off the wall in left field.
I'm surprised though that you don't think it's Monty Williams sending a message to Jaden Ivey, because I felt like over the last few seasons, a lot of these young players have gotten a lot of opportunity that they didn't have to earn. And it really felt like they weren't being held accountable. So I like that Monty Williams is coming in and holding these guys accountable. And he's been preaching defense. And that's something you and I have talked about from Jaden Ivey pretty much since we started this podcast, that's going to be the evolution of him as a player is, can he become an elite two-way player? He has all the athletic tools to do it, but he just hasn't figured that side of the ball out yet. So I do think it is a message for Monty Williams where, yeah, I'm still going to play you because you're too talented for me not to play you, but you haven't earned the right to start on my team because that side of the ball is not good. And I can't have you out there affecting things. But if I have you coming off the bench, there is certain situations where I can use you and have you thrive in them where it doesn't hurt us defensively. And even in today's NBA, I don't think defense it is still kind of funny to me that a coach will say, like, we're going to preach defense because the offense, the NBA today is all about offense. It's all about just outscoring someone. You want to get a few stops, but it's not like the going to work Pistons where you can clamp down defensively and you can really stop a team on that side of the ball. That type of defense it does not exist in today's NBA. But again, I do think it is Monty Williams sending a message to Jaden Ivey. Like, what? And you're right, he is showing the effort. But once you get better on this side of the ball, I'm going to give you the honor of starting for my team again, and I'm going to throw you back out with them.
You know what it reminds me of a little bit? Do you remember the summer? And I know this is completely off topic. Different coach, different regime. You remember when the Pistons wanted to extend KCP?
Yep.
And he went to the Lakers. We trade Marcus Morris for Avery Bradley from the Celtics. That same summer, we draft Luke Kennard. And who starts? Avery Bradley. Who sucked? Avery Bradley. Who did the Pistons trade? Avery Bradley. Luke Kennard started in those games because it was showing Van Gundy at the time, I can put it together. Offensively, not defensively, Luke Kennard, I think we can all agree, wasn't terrible, but he was average at best. And the reason why I bring that up is there could be a situation where the shooting guard on this team could either be Alec Burks or Joe Harris, and Ivy has to earn his way into that starting rotation. I don't know if that's the case, I've been trying to think, back in like this Pistons history of having a talented player that didn't get that starting minutes. Now, obviously, the Pistons last year were a rebuilding team, and Dwayne Casey was just throwing all those young guys out there just to get reps. I don't
Yeah.
really think he was really worried about win totals or anything like that. But I think to your point, Monty has preached defense since he's come to Detroit, and not to say that Jaden Ivey's a lockdown defender. He's not a bad defender, but there are times where he does just get attacked. Like the Suns were attacking him like crazy in the first preseason game because they know he's not a good defender. I don't know. It's hard because offensively it's there, but to your point, you said he's trying to send a message. Well, it seems like that message is just to Jaden Ivey. I could argue that message that should be sent to Isaiah Stewart too, because Isaiah Stewart so far in the preseason has been getting cooked. If you're gonna send that, that's why I don't think it's a message directed towards Jaden Ivey. I think he's just trying to see what lineups work, because if that message was the case, Isaiah Stewart would be on the bench. I know we don't have a lot of depth at power forward, but if you're trying to send a message to your young players that if you want to play, I need it on the defensive end and defensive and offensive, then Isaiah Stewart would probably be coming off the bench.
Yeah, but I mean, even with Isaiah Stewart, the effort and the hustle is always there. He's always 100 when he's on the floor, and he has shown even in this preseason he's had better defensive moments than Jaden Ivey. I thought you were going to talk about if he was sending a message to Jaden Ivey, why are you playing Bojan, who he gets cooked defensively all the time. And my argument would have been that, well, Bojan is such a good offensive player that it actually does outweigh. I don't think Jaden Ivey is that offensive on that level yet offensively, where you're like, we got to have him out on the floor at all times because his offense is just so good. It outweighs the bad defense. But this is what I was thinking too. As soon as he started to come off the bench, I started thinking like, what if Asar Thompson takes a leap as a shooter and as an offensive player, where the Pistons start to think, you know what? He could be our second option offensively. The playmaking's there, the handle's there. He can drive, he can finish at the rim. Now the shooting is finally getting there, and it makes Jaden Ivey expendable. Do you think if Asar Thompson's offense takes the leap his rookie year, where they start to think, all right, he could be the number 2 off of Cade, that they might look to try to trade Jaden Ivey while his value is still high?
I love you. I really do, but this is going to sound really mean. No. Asar's offensive game, in my opinion, isn't going to take the leap that you just mentioned. I think he can take strides in getting better at being a better corner 3-point shooter. But Jaden Ivey, I think the reason why I just thought of another reason why he's not starting. I'll ask you this question. It's a rhetorical question. What does Asar Thompson and Jaden Ivey have in common from a skill set wise?
I would say from a skill set, I mean, I would say the thing that they both have in common is just the athleticism and the ability to drive and get to the rim. I would say they both have that in their bag.
So why would you want both of those guys on the court at the same time when they both do the same thing?
Yeah.
Now, Ivy is a better shooter from the outside. We can both agree there. I think that could be the reason why Monty isn't starting him. But like I said, I am just nitpicking. I'm trying to figure it out, because if the message is defense, then the message is inconsistent, as True Teller said in the chat, right? I think what they have in common is they're athletically gifted, they flourish in transition, and they're very fast players. But like I can't figure it out. Now, if you want to say we want to have an instant spark plug off the bench, sure. But what happens when Monte Morris comes back?
I think Monte and Jaden Ivey are going to be fine. I think they're going to be great off the bench together. I think that's a neat little duo off the bench that can make some strides against other second units. I don't know, man. I think there's a part of me where if Ivy doesn't put it together defensively, it's just he might be the odd man out of the core. That's just I don't know why I think that. It just seems like his game can be replicated by a handful of other people in the league. Like we just saw Marcus Sasser. I know he's a little bit shorter than Jaden Ivey, but he can get to the rim. He already looks like he's a better shooter than Jaden Ivey, and he gets after it defensively. So I'm wondering, and then Asar, he's already leaps and bounds ahead of Jaden Ivey on the defensive side. He gives you better size on the perimeter. He's another playmaker himself. You can rely on him now to bring the ball up the floor. The only thing missing is a consistent three-point shot, but he can attack the rim and honestly finish better than Jaden Ivey. It just, to me, it feels like him coming off the bench is more writing on the wall that his time in Detroit might be shorter than other people's. And I hate to have a hot take like that because I love Jaden Ivey and I hope he is here for a long time. And I want him and Cade to gel in the backcourt. But there's just a part of me where it's like, man, he might be the most expendable, especially if Asar Thompson just starts taking some leaps offensively, which I think he will as the season progresses. I think because he's such a hard worker and he's dedicated to his craft. Not saying Jaden Ivey isn't, but Jaden Ivey is one of those players where all the talent in the world, it feels like he could just get stuck playing one way and never grow from it. And I don't know. Those are my thoughts on Jaden Ivey coming off the bench.
Here's the thing. You did this last year a lot with Sadiq Bey.
Yeah.
Where I'm starting to see a pattern. I think Jaden Ivey is getting tough love from Monty Williams. And I was thinking back because Jaden Ivey had a really interesting quote media day saying that he's just so blessed to have him as a coach. And it's a privilege to learn from him. I think Monty is giving him special attention. And what I mean by that is I think Monty kind of views him at the same light as Jalen Duren. I'll explain. I think Jaden Ivey is just such a special player and a special athlete. One of those players that I think a lot of teams would kill to have. I think him coming off the bench really isn't a big deal. If that is his role, I don't really see that as a big deal. But I don't think the Pistons are going to move off of him. If I had to pick a core player that would get traded, it would probably be Killian Hayes before Jaden Ivey, even though Killian Hayes is playing phenomenally right now. Monty Williams' comments about Killian were kind of alarming, in a good way though, not in a bad way. But I think the Pistons view Jaden Ivey as a key piece. Now it's up to Monty Williams to put him in the best position to succeed, and I think he will. I think him coming off the bench is maybe it's a learning experience for him because he's always been the best player. He's always been that number one guy. Again, it's preseason. We could be overreacting, and maybe a month from now, Jaden Ivey starting, and we just look like complete jackasses, and people in the comments are saying, "Man, you guys are so fucking dumb." Like I said, it's October 15th as we're recording this. I don't really think Jaden Ivey coming off the bench is a problem, but if the message is defense, then let it, flow through the whole starting lineup.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just go on one player. That's why I don't think it's a message that Monty is directing towards Ivy. I think it's his tough love at the end of the day, because I think Monty really sees something special in Jaden Ivey, and I was really high on him coming out of college, out of Purdue. A lot of people weren't at the time. I planted my flag in, the Jaden Ivey camp because I thought he was just a really special player. And I still do. I don't think the Pistons are going to move on from him. I don't think he's going to be your Sadiq Bey of this year. I really don't. But
Go on. My bad.
No, you can answer.
No, I was just going to say, I don't think he's going to be traded this year. I think this roll off the bench for him right now is the best possible situation for him. And I also think throwing a veteran in, whether it's Alec Burks or Bojan, or maybe even both at some point during the season, it shows me that the Pistons are really trying to actually win games this year, and they're not going to try to tank and lose. So I'm okay with it. Again, I do think Jaden Ivey off the bench is the best possible. He's being put in the best possible situation this year. I don't think starting really matters that much. I think it depends on who's finishing the game. I just want to see Jaden Ivey grow. He is, because I mean, I know Cade and Durant and Asar are going to be fine. I think they're going to reach close to their ceilings, going to get as close as they possibly can. Jaden Ivey's the one guy for me where I'm like, I'm rooting harder for him out of those four than probably out of all of them. He's the guy that I'm rooting for the most, just because there is so much potential there. And he is a unique player that you can use in a lot of different ways. But again, before we move on, I'm just going to say, I think Jaden Ivey off the bench is he's being put in the best possible situation right now.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's just tough love. I think if a lot of Pistons fans want this team to compete for the playoffs, because I know they do, a lot of your favorite players aren't going to be on this team.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to make some tough decisions. A lot of your favorite players might not get playing time, and this team is incredibly young. But there's just going to be a lot of changes. Maybe the rotations aren't what you think they're going to be. Monty could completely surprise you and throw Joe Harris and Boyan in the starting lineup together. You really don't know, man. Like if the goal is to make a play and or try to compete for a playoff spot, you're going to lean really heavily on your veterans, and you kind of risk the development.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about, we can move on after this, but I'm thinking about Troy Weaver's comments of Media Day. He says the 3 Ds that they want to preach: defense, development, and I can't remember the last D. I'm a retard. Discipline. There we go. I think you can't, I don't think there's room for development and defense and discipline if you're trying to win. That's my thing. Like, you have to pick one. Do you want to win games? You want to compete for the playoffs? Or do you want to kind of flirt with 25 wins this season and say, hey, we made progress. We didn't win. We won more than 17 games.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear the word development, I just don't think of the young players. I think of developing overall as a team.
Yeah.
And I think the discipline part is just staying out of foul trouble. Seems too simple to say, though. Either way, Cade Cunningham, he's missed 70 games last year with a shin injury. He missed 18 games his rookie year, and he has now missed the Pistons' second preseason game, I think with, quad tendonitis or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so are you concerned at all with Cade Cunningham and the injuries?
I'm not. We can document, like, he had an ankle injury his rookie year, and he missed all training camp. Comes back, I believe, against the Orlando Magic his rookie season. And, he had games where he struggled at first, but once he got his, footing under him, he was putting up really good games. He looked like a franchise player. He was setting records that, like, haven't been set in over 30 years. Not even just Pistons records, like NBA records as a rookie. But he gets hurt end of his rookie season, or maybe the Pistons shut him down. Who knows, for the tank. Fast forward, plays 12 games last season. Obviously, we all know, he had season-ending surgery, and we've seen clips all summer of him. His jump shot looks good, looks healthy. He says, I feel 100%. And he went too hard in practice, and he got some tendonitis. I want people to understand tendonitis, if it's minor, and obviously it's minor because James Edwards said that he was dunking and shooting today at open practice. If you have minor tendonitis, you can just ice that and it'll go away the next day. Tendonitis is so minor. I'm not really concerned with Cade Cunningham's injuries because I think he'll put a campaign this season where a lot of people can just be at ease, where they don't kind of label him injury prone, or I've seen some fans compare him to Grant Hill already, which I don't like those comparisons because we all know how Grant Hill's career ended. But I'm not concerned personally as a fan. I think he had surgery. I think Drew Holiday was the most recent NBA player that had that injury, and Drew Holiday, as we know, NBA champion. And he's put together, healthy seasons with the Milwaukee Bucks. Now he's with the Boston Celtics this season coming up. But I think Cade will be fine. I'm not really ready to, put that injury. He's a injured riddle. I can't talk today.
No.
I just cannot talk. I'm so tired. I don't think he's injury prone. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. There's a small piece of me that's a little concerned. And because he's the number 1 overall pick. We've all invested in him as fans. Troy Weaver, I feel like, has drafted players to build around Cade Cunningham, guys that could play off of him, that will make his skill set more pronounced. I think it's all there. But man, missing 70 games last year, ankle injuries, it's just minor injuries. That tiny little feeling that's there that I am concerned about Cade and all the injuries, that will go away once he's healthy. If he just plays close to 70 games this year, that will go out the window for me. But until that happens, it's always going to be in the back of my head that we're one slip, we're one fall, we're one rolled ankle of him just being another what if. And I don't want that. And and I know nobody else wants that, but that's just what I'm thinking. And it really sucks. I'm glad that Troy Weaver has drafted the way he has, because it would be a huge blow to lose Cade Cunningham, but the Pistons would still be in a decent spot if he somehow does go down with injuries season after season.
Yeah, like I said, it's just a big what if. And, some people on Facebook were saying, like, he just has to prove it. If he proves it, then people shut up.
Yep.
Simple as that. You can prove you can stay healthy. Pistons fans will shut up.
100%.
Like, fans on our Facebook page, I've heard he's a bust. Trade him while you can. This organization can't win with Cade Cunningham. He's too injury riddled. Like, we just need to get rid of him while we can and get value. I don't think the Pistons are at that point. I know some fans are, because they're just sick of losing and they're sick of hearing about injuries with this team. If anything, and I know this is off topic, I think the Pistons need to reinvest into their medical staff, because this isn't just a Troy Weaver problem. This dates all the way back to like when Van Gundy was here. And I know they're new people within the Detroit Pistons organization with their medical staff, but they have just had so many injuries over the last 10 years. Like, they need to find someone in there that can just get these guys ready to go game in and game out.
Remember when everybody for a few seasons wanted to go play for the Phoenix Suns because there was something in the Phoenix water where it would just revitalize your career? Like Shaq, Grant Hill, to name a couple of guys, went there to play, and they had like a small resurgence where they looked healthy. That's what I want for Detroit. Yeah, it seems like it's been after the going to work squad, it just seems like there's been something wrong with the medical staff team. I don't really know who's on it, so I'm not going to call anybody out, but I don't know. It's a little concerning, just a little bit. Cade Cunningham, there's another list by ESPN. He was ranked the 74th best player. He was ranked 35th last year. A lot of guys, though, were falling. I think John Morant dropped from 12 the previous year. Now I think he's like 35, 36, 37, somewhere around there. We did have a funny segment on ESPN by Richard Jefferson where he was talking Cade Cunningham up and everybody else was looking at him like he was crazy. But what are your thoughts on Cade Cunningham being ranked the 74th best player in the NBA?
Before I do get to that, I do want to put ESPN's rankings on the screen.
Okay.
Because there's some people that watch this that don't subscribe to ESPN Plus, and why would you? It's like my biggest pet peeve is companies that charge you to read their content. It's the stupidest thing, but I'll put this on the screen. This is a graphic from ESPN, and these are players that are ranked between 51st and 100th. And as you can see, they had Westbrook 94th, Kuzma 86th, Scoot Henderson 78th, CP3 76th. You got our guy Cade Cunningham 74th. You got a guy that hasn't played yet, Chet Holmgren, 73. Jordan Poole, Austin Reeves, which I if he wasn't in LA, he probably wouldn't even be ranked in the top 60. Zion and Draymond Green. Okay.
Oof.
So this is my problem with these ESPN rankings. A lot of these guys that make these lists, and it's not just one guy, it's multiple people at ESPN that cover the teams on the beat. Now, obviously, Cade didn't play last season. He played 12 games. I'm not so mad at him being ranked 74th. I think I'm more mad at recency bias with these lists because these lists they're just recency bias all day. Like Chet Holmgren, he shouldn't be a top 100 player. Same with Scoot Henderson. Same with Victor Wembanyama. He should not be a top 100 player because you're basing it off last season. And those guys didn't play last season. They shouldn't be on the list. And I think we've talked about that multiple times, not even ESPN list, but Bleacher Report, CBS list, whatever. I don't have a problem with Cade dropping from 35th to 74th. I think it's warranted with the season he did have, but that's just kind of my rant on it. I just think the list every year to me is just cheap engagement, clickbait, just to get fans pissed off of not just Pistons fans, but like fans around the NBA of their favorite team and their favorite player. Maybe they have like Anthony Edwards like crazy or something like that. Maybe not even like a top 15 player. I don't know. I haven't read the full list, but you get what I'm saying.
I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was like ranked 7th, and some people had a problem with that. He was all NBA first team, though. I mean, he had a phenomenal year last year. But do you have, now that we've seen a little bit of Chet Holmgren, we've seen 2 games from him, do you have a problem with him still being on this list, even though we've seen him play? I know it's only preseason, but he looked pretty good when he played against Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah, I mean, it's preseason, but like to me, preseason it's not real NBA action.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
mean, there are players that are probably going to be in the G League, play overseas, whatever. Like Victor Wembanyama going up against Joel Embiid. Those are real NBA minutes.
Yeah.
To me personally. But my problem with these lists is like, yes, Victor, Scoot, Brandon Miller, all those guys going to have great careers, but leave them off of a list if they haven't played any NBA minutes yet.
Do you think this might be a weird question, but do you think when ESPN puts these lists out and they drop a guy that there's part of the reasoning they do it is they want us to wipe them from our memory? Like you're dropping John Morant. Like I said, I think he was 12th last year and he's in the 30s now this year. I know he had some issues last year off the court, but he was still a phenomenal player. It just feels like ESPN is trying to make a play where it's like, we're going to move John Morant out. He's not going to – we dictate who's popular, who the jersey sales are. You're not going to be able to see him on TV, but now we're bringing in the fresh blood. Because John Morant was talked about like an MVP candidate last year, and now he's just being dismissed by the NBA. Same with Zion Williamson. You know, I know he was hurt last year too, but when he's healthy and he's on, he looks like a top 10 player in the NBA. And I know what you were talking about earlier during the preseason where he was just letting people blow by him, but that's probably just because it is preseason.
Yeah.
And, you know, but it just seems kind of weird to drop him so low and have him mid-50s now when he is on the floor. He's one of the best players in the league. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It feels like it always feels like ESPN and other big publications that make these lists always have a hidden agenda where I don't know. That was just something I was thinking about. I don't really have much thoughts of Cade Cunningham being named 74th. I'm just glad he's still on the list because he only played 12 games last year. And you know, I mean, it was a good 12 games. He averaged 26 and 6. It was impressive, but he was still out for 70 games. So I'm just glad he's still ranked on the top 100.
Yeah, I think the list has a lot to do with media people, agents like Rich Paul. Got to keep him happy because we all know if you don't keep his clients like at the top of the list, he makes a fit. I think my biggest thing was Nikola Jokic to me, proved everyone wrong last season. Everyone says, he shouldn't be MVP this season. He can't win in the big moments. They win the NBA title, and ESPN ranks him second. Like, the guy just won an NBA championship. Are we serious right now? He's one of the best players in basketball. I thought he should have been one, but that's just me. And I'm kind of a Denver Nuggets fan, but still, like a closet Denver Nuggets fan. But like,
who did they have number one?
I want to say it was Giannis.
Okay.
Which I'm not mad at, but I just think Jokic should be number one.
So do you think they do that to Jokic just because in his interviews with people where they're like, oh, how does it feel to be a champion? He's like, I feel the same.
Yeah, because he doesn't care.
Yeah, he doesn't care at all. Where he's one of these he's a unique player, not for just how he plays, but how he carries himself. Basketball just does not define who he is. He's more than just a basketball player. It's a job for him, and he wants to be great at it. But I feel like ESPN and, again, other publications, they dismiss Nikola Jokic because he doesn't give them the answers that they want. I'm actually surprised they still had him at number 2 based on that. Because I swear to God, I hope Denver repeats this year. I really do. I want him, and I hope he's MVP. I want him to rub it in their face that a guy that is more than a basketball player is doing great things. And then I hope they drop him even further on the list, because I want to see the hate, just see that out of these guys. And I want all of us to call BS on all of it. It does bother me, though, because he does not get the credit that he deserves. Everybody, it always feels like they look for every little thing to give him a bad mark, to put a bruise on his career. And I absolutely hate it. He's number 1 in the NBA. Maybe he doesn't play that good of defense. He's still a serviceable defensive player. And I don't know, man. I agree with you. He should have been number 1. He's the best player on the planet.
It's funny because it's like European players are a lot like Jokic. Like, Bojan is very similar to Jokic. Like, I was reading an article from James Edwards this week, and it was, why did you pick your jersey number? And Bojan's like had maybe a sentence in James's article, and he's just like, I just picked it.
Yeah.
Like, they don't care. They're different. Like, Bojan doesn't care that he's in Michigan. He's getting a paycheck. Like, Europeans they're just built different, man. They don't give a shit. They're not like people from America where, like, like they want the fame, they want the max contracts, they want the sound bites. Like, that's what ESPN gets mad at. It's because, like, he is probably they're like, he's such a boring player to cover. He's a boring interview. The Denver Nuggets are a boring team. It's just like, why does it matter what soundbite he gives you if they play great basketball?
Exactly.
That's my problem. It's just like a lot of these media companies are so focused on the headlines and the clickbait of, oh, LeBron said this. Like, I'd rather watch the game than care about a press conference. Like, obviously, if he says something like crazy, sure. But, like, I think that's what's wrong with basketball and the way it's covered right now is all these media members pick their favorites each and every year to win certain awards or title favorites, whatever it may be. And they're taking away from the game itself. Like, there's a lot of players in the NBA that don't get talked about because they're similar to Jokic, where they just hoop and they're not out there partying. They're not at clubs like James Harden or, hanging out with little baby like he does. Like, there's some players that just play basketball and they don't get coverage at all. And ESPN is just so focused on headlines just to make some money and, sell some clicks.
Yeah, it feels like the way they talk about basketball in such a weird way too. It's not necessarily just always on the floor, but it's about the drama off of it. It's like a soap opera sometimes. It's so weird. Like, if Nikola Jokic had came out and said, if they asked him, like, oh, what does it feel like to be a champion? I'm better than LeBron James. Suck it. They'd be like, oh, he is the best player in the NBA. They would have put him number 1, and he would have been number 1 over here and Giannis number 2 over here. The distance, the gap would have been larger if he had just given him something. But the fact that he just said, whatever. They don't care. It's dumb.
I know we ranted for a little bit, but that I probably sound like an old man yelling at clouds right now. But like, that's just like my biggest issue. It's just like, I know this is completely off topic, but like, and the NFL right now, they were like obsessed with Taylor Swift, and that's all they would talk about, like during a football game. Like they wouldn't talk about the Chiefs. They're pointing the camera at her like 20 times a game because it sells, because it gets them clicks. It's just like focus on the game. No one cares.
And I've always praised the NFL for the way they talk about the game, where they break it down on their shows. They'll tell you, like, when this guy drops back in the quarterback position, he looks off the defense and the safety pulls over, and this guy's open over the middle. You're like, man, damn, you guys do such a great job of breaking down the offense. I wish the NBA did this, which they really don't. But you're right. Even the NFL gets wrapped up in what's popular, what should we talk about. But I will say the cool thing about having so many fans of hers watching the NFL game, the NFL is getting more fans that are like, you can see some of the comments where it's like, I was never a fan. Someone was pulling this up on my Facebook where they're like, I was never a fan of football, but until I started watching the Chiefs and Travis Kelce, now I want to be in a fantasy football league. And I know what blank, blank, blank and blank means. It's like, man, that's actually pretty cool. It's a, you know, even though it sucks how many times they point the camera at her because it does take away from the game, it's still really cool that now the NFL has that many more fans and that many more people watching their games. But we can move on, man. We don't need to keep talking about Swifties and everything.
Don't even say the word Swifties. They'll come out. It's like Beetlejuice, dude.
Say it 3 times. So Terrence Mann said he thought the Pistons were going to draft him back in 2019. I don't know how many more stories I have to hear about this, but it seems like every week there's a player that's like, yeah, I showed out in the Pistons workout and they said that they were going to draft me. I wish the Pistons would stop saying this because this is getting embarrassing, but you can roll the clip, man.
Okay, this is from the Title League Podcast Network. They had sent this over for us to share with you guys.
What was your best workout?
I'd probably say Detroit.
Really?
I went to Detroit. Something took over, and I was in there.
Brian.
Going crazy.
So you calling your agent out there? Think I'm gonna be a Piston.
Yep.
I know they gonna
me like I heard what happened today.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of good workouts though.
Yeah.
Like every workout I went to, I feel like I did really well, except for like maybe one. But
so, can I add some context before we get into this?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So for 2019, for you guys to remember, the Pistons did have a second round draft pick, and they traded up in the second round, and they selected a European player of the name Davidas Servidis. Dave. And for Pistons fans that don't know who that is, he was a draft and stash player. He came over. He was on the cruise, did okay, played with the Pistons during the rebuilding years under Casey, and just did not look like an NBA player. And the only reason the Pistons drafted him was because Davidas Servidis' agent is Michael Tellem. And Michael Tellem is related to Arn Tellem. And Arn Tellem is the vice president of the Detroit Pistons. He's Tom Gore's right-hand man. And right-hand man and Terrence Mann. It's actually kind of funny. But this is my issue with it. There were a lot of players you could have drafted in the second round in 2019. You can look at some of the players that the Pistons passed up on because they were doing a favor for Arn Tellem's son. So, he could get his big break in, the sports media, the sports agency world. But like, to me, like you said, we hear this all the time. I had a great workout. I thought I was going to Detroit. So many people have said that. It just has me thinking that there are so many cooks in the kitchen in terms of draft evaluation and what happens when the Pistons do draft way before Troy Weaver got here. And it's just like, if you look at Terrence Mann and the player he is, he would have been excellent for the Detroit Pistons off the bench. He's just a spark plug off the bench. But that's just the rant I wanted to tell Pistons fans about that story with why the Pistons passed on Terrence Mann and why they did draft Davidas Servidis. in the 2019 NBA draft in the second round.
Yeah, they could have had Daniel Gafford. He went immediately right after Servetus. Eric Pascal, I liked him a little bit for Golden State. Bol. I didn't know Detroit drafted Isaiah Roby, though, at 45. I think he's with the San Antonio Spurs now.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor Horton Tucker Jr., who still is only like 21 years old. He's been playing in the NBA since 2019. It's unreal. Ignas Brazdeikis, I had a lot of love for him coming out of Michigan. Then Terrence Mann, 48, slipped down all the way there. That's crazy. And then Jalen McDaniels, we'll just mention his name at 52. But let me ask you, if Musa and Servetus were to play, do you think that one-on-one game gets finished?
Musa who?
Are you just saying Musa? Oh, okay. You're just trying to be funny?
No, I don't know who you're talking about.
The guy they traded Bruce Brown for.
Oh, I forgot about him. Oh, my God.
Yeah, Musa. Come on, man. How can you think about that game?
I flushed that. I was so numb after that trade. It made no sense. Then we got context. It's because Bruce went to Boston for his birthday, and Troy didn't like that, so he traded him. But that's Bruce's story. But I don't know, man. They're both trash.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Terrence Mann. He's an elite role player, man. He can do a little bit of everything. Last year, averaged 8 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, shot 52% from the field, 39% from three, got to the line and shot 78% from the free. He's like a high-powered Bruce Brown, and Bruce Brown was a huge contributor for the Denver Nuggets last year. He can play multiple positions. He is labeled as a guard, a shooting guard, and a small forward. But there have been lineups where he plays the 4 and the 5 for him. You know, he's setting picks, very good at cutting and finding those holes in the defense, good finisher around the rim, can hit the three shot. He's reliable, can push it in transition, can bring the ball up for you if you need him. He's an elite player, man, as a role player. And man, that just hurts my feelings, man. There could be such a good squad of players that the Pistons passed over. Man, it just breaks your heart, man. What were they thinking?
Yeah, it seems like you said every week there's a player in the NBA that said, "Yeah, I thought I was going to Detroit," and then they don't go to Detroit. It's just the weirdest thing to me. But I mean, stuff like that does happen. But
yeah, it's Terrence Mann, Desmond Bane. He's one that I'm thinking of right now. That would be lethal on the perimeter. I know there's a few more guys, but those two, since we're talking about the right now, like I said, I just wish the Pistons would stop promising these guys if that's actually what they're doing. And maybe draft the guy that just kills it in the workout. You know, like we lost out on Donovan Mitchell because I don't even know why. And he had a great workout for the Pistons. Just if they have a great workout for you and you know, they look like to be the real deal, just draft them. We're not going to complain.
yeah, it's just I think the Pistons need to stay away from European players because their evaluation with European players, to me, just over like the last 5 years, it's just been swings and misses. They're trying to find that next Jokic, and it's just like lightning in a bottle. Like you're not gonna find that next Jokic. You're just not. Not even Darko. I'm just thinking like Servetus. I'm thinking of Gabriel Procida because I don't even know if he's going to be an NBA player. I really don't. I don't, man. It's just like there's nothing against him. Like he has promise and everything, but it's like I don't know if he's going to be a really an NBA ready player. It's just he's so raw right now, and he needs so much time to develop. But it's just like over the last couple of
Balsa too.
Yeah, he I think he got traded to the Clippers just his draft rights, but he's playing overseas. It's just
Killian Hayes, French player. Sekou Doumbouya, French player.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe Dumars outside of Darko, he actually did have some good pickups. Carlos Delfino. I don't know if he actually drafted Rebraca, but he was a solid NBA player. Jonas Jerebko, Okur, some good names right there. Drafted by Joe Dumars. Right, man? You take a lot of swings.
Yeah, I mean, like you have like legendary European players like Dirk, and I think everyone's just trying to find that next Dirk or that next Jokic or that next Manu or Tony Parker, and it's just so rare. It's so rare that you get lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, I remember when the Nuggets drafted Nicholas Tavishki because they thought he would be the next Dirk Nowitzki, and then it was, I think, Phoenix. They drafted Dragan Bender because they thought he would be the next Kristaps Porzingis. And it's
Yeah.
like he's averaging 1 point per game in a lesser league. He's not even getting off the bench in a lesser European league, and you're going to draft him with a lottery pick. You know how I knew Kristaps Porzingis was going to be pretty good? Because he was playing in a better European league and he was getting minutes and he was putting points up. That's how you
Yeah.
know. If they can get off the bench and play, they're going to be pretty solid. It's proven. But if they're just sitting on the bench, not getting any minutes and averaging 1 point per game, that's a good indication they're not going to be very good. Because how the hell are they going to get off an NBA bench if they can't get off a lower level European bench? I don't get it. It blows my mind. Put me in a GM spot, and I guarantee you I could probably draft an all-star before some of these other GMs.
Yeah, like, I know some people are mentioning like Darko. I just said over the last 5 years because I didn't want to go down memory lane. I think you could have a 30 for 30 with all the Pistons draft misses. Honestly.
I'll never forgive them for passing over David Lee. That's what I really wanted years ago, late in the first round. Broke my heart. Do we have any Q&A questions?
We don't. Oh man, that's funny. Some people are just they're trolls. Can't really think of any questions that we could answer right now, but I could scroll up and see if anyone asked a question. Let's see.
Did you know the Pistons drafted a guy named Ishmael in the 2022 draft with the 46th pick?
I did not.
I don't even remember this.
Probably got traded right away.
Yeah, maybe. It was in the draft where Milwaukee forfeited their second round pick and the Miami Heat forfeited their second round pick. Dude.
It's a good question. Even though we have talked about Killian Hayes quite a bit on this podcast, do you see a scenario where Killian stays and we trade some of our signees?
Like right now, this year? Or are you talking about like long term? Because I think this is Killian Hayes' prove it year in Detroit, and so far in the 2 preseason games, he has proven to look like a serviceable player. I think his time is done as a point guard. I think we're going to slowly start to see a transition where he's going to start playing more off the ball because he does have the size and the defense, and he still is a good playmaker. But I just don't know if you want – it's a small sample size in 2 preseason games. If you really want him having the ball, and if you did, why would you trade for Monte Morris? So I think there's still a role for Killian in the NBA, but I don't think it's as a point guard. And I don't know. I don't see them trading anybody right at this moment. I was on that bandwagon a couple weeks ago where I thought Killian Hayes could be out the door, but after his 2 preseason games, I don't think they're going to trade him. I think they want to see what they have because he is only 22 years old.
Yeah, that's a fair point. What I'll say is Joe Harris and Monte Morris, since they were both traded for, I believe they can't trade them until like December or January. Just to get it out there. So I don't know if your question is like before training camp. If it's not, I don't see the Pistons moving on from Monte Morris. And I don't see them moving on from Joe Harris, because I don't really think a lot of people are going to trade for Joe Harris's contract, even though it's like, 1 year in the books. I just feel like we ask way too much for the players that we sign, like Bojan, for example, like 2 first-round picks. Like, who knows what Troy would ask for like a Monte Morris or a right? It just feels like he doesn't want to trade him. To answer your question, I think Killian does stay, and I've said this quite a few times over the last couple of weeks. I think Killian is an emergency point guard just in case there is an injury. Like Monte Morris has had back spasms the past 2 weeks, or 2 weeks, past 2 games, preseason games, obviously. But Killian has stepped up and he's taken advantage of those minutes because Morris isn't out there playing. I think you need to have 3 point guards, especially on this team, given just the medical history of this team. And you never know, like Monte Morris may not be good to go, opening night, and you have Killian Hayes now. So, trading him, I think, would kind of be premature until you have a reliable backup point guard. So I have no problems with the Pistons just keeping him on this team. And I don't know if they would trade a Monte Morris or a Joe Harris. I would find it really hard to believe because Troy just asked for so much to just even make a trade, especially for a guy that he signs in free agency or trades for. Let's see.
I keep going down this list of looking for European players the Pistons have drafted.
Yeah, we got a couple of questions. And I'm just gonna star them and then we can do that. I did see a quote, and we'll answer some of these questions in a minute. But Monty Williams, I'm probably going to do that sometime at this year. Monte Williams and Monty Williams. I just get them. They're so close. But Monty Williams said that Killian's goal should be a starting point guard in the NBA.
What?
Yeah, it was a quote. I believe Mike Curtis or Amari Sankofa had shared the quote. Said his goal should be to be a starting point guard in the NBA, and I'm like, yeah, I think that should be your goal as a starter. But like, it was just kind of weird to say that right before the season starts, because we know who the starting point guard on this team is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if everything was perfect, you could see a world where Killian and Cade could play together. They both have the skill sets to do that, but I don't know. It seems like he's just blown his butt, dude. It's so weird. Like, I get it. You really want to talk your players up and you want to build up that confidence if they need it or that self-esteem, but I don't know what he means by that. It's just so weird. Every player that plays in the NBA should want to be a starter.
Yeah, I agree. I think Red Baron said it perfectly. He's coaching players' mindsets, it seems like. Yeah, I agree. I just think some people saw that quote and they ran with it. They're like, oh, Pistons are trading Killian. It's like, I don't think that's what he meant. I think he was just like trying to get their confidence up. But we do have a question from Red Baron. He said, question, how many players will be traded this year from the Pistons? Over, under 2.5?
I'm going to say under.
Under?
Yeah.
Okay, I am going to say, kind of looking at these contracts, depending on how they do, like, let's say the Pistons are overachievers, I could see them going over. But if they're underachievers and they're kind of like in a similar situation where they're not even close to a play-in spot, like a 10th seed, I could just see them staying pat and just not making any trades whatsoever. I think it really depends on how they do as a team, like in the win column. Because if they're winning games, they may want to upgrade a position to, try to make a playoff push. Just to get the confidence up from, just the locker room. But I'm going to go under, but because I just don't know how many games this team is going to win. I know I said 35. And I don't want to go back on it, but I don't think they're going to win 30 games this year.
I'm still sticking with 28 to 32.
Yeah.
I was going to say the reason I chose under, if the Pistons, I could see them keeping, if the Pistons are, I feel like they're going to do better and they're going to win more games for sure. But if this roster is playing well, I could see them keeping it intact until the offseason. Because then you have, I think, Bojan's contract coming up, Joe Harris's contract, and I don't know, I got to look at Burks, but you have money coming off the books where you can sign another player. So if you look like a winning team, that might be more enticing for an all-star to come here in the offseason. So that's why I don't see the Pistons really trading anybody. Unless it is like a Killian Hayes or a Marvin Bagley or even a James Wiseman. But with the Bojans and the Burks and the Joe Harris and the Monte Morris, I see all those guys staying on this team until the offseason. And then the Pistons will make some moves.
Yeah, like I said, it'll be interesting. I think it's really dependent on how they do this season. Like, I could be completely wrong, and they're really pushing for that playing spot, and maybe they're looking for that veteran to like really push them over the edge to try to get them into that playing spot, or say they're like a 10 seed and they just want to add a veteran to like really help the young core win more games. Then yeah, I could see maybe 2.5 trades, but I think it's really dependent on how they do this season. And they do have a lot of contracts like that are favorable where you could move them. Like Burks is, I think, really attractive to a lot of contenders. Joe Harris, obviously, he's another guy that I think a lot of contenders will be calling about. Monte Morris is another one. I mean, you have a lot of one-year contracts on your books that you could definitely move. But thanks for the question, Red Baron. Great question, as always. Ooh, that's a great question. I love this one. And I like your YouTube avatar, Unbeatable. So Unbeatable Jacob asks, chances Duren, Wiseman, Bagley, and Stewart are all on the roster next year at this time?
I would say not likely that all four of them are on this roster next year at this time. I would say Duren and Stewart for sure will be on the roster next year. Wiseman and Bagley. I would honestly think that maybe both of them are on different teams next year at this time. I could see the Pistons doing something like that, letting both those guys go. Because in my opinion, as of right now, both have underachieved. And if the Pistons want to get better, you got to cut the dead weight.
I'm just thinking. I'm waiting for them to openly say this too big lineup doesn't work anymore. And I don't think it's going to be this season. But if I had to, I'll answer your question, Jacob. I think Duren and Stewart will be on this roster. I don't think they're going to extend. They're not. Oh, they can't extend Bagley or Wiseman, I should say. I think they'll just kind of see what happens this season, and if he does well, they might re-sign him. But I think it's doubtful because I think they need a veteran center. Like you had mentioned, that they need like a Dwight Howard presence in the locker room, or just a veteran center to like really help Jalen Duren mold into a starting caliber center. And with Bagley, I think he's valuable if he keeps the production up. And I think how many years does he have in his contract left?
I'm going to look it up right now.
Like a year or two, I believe.
Give me a second. Sound effects while I'm searching. This year and next year, it'll be up in the 25 season. The 2024 and 25 seasons, the last year of his deal. And he'll only be 25 years old. Wow.
Yeah, I don't know if they want to move on from him because he's just instant offense. But like for the sake of this question, I think Duren and Stewart to me are just going to be mainstays on this roster long term. Obviously, Duren is still on a rookie deal, and they just gave Stewart an extension because they think very highly of him. But to answer your question, Jacob, I think it'll just be 2 out of the 4. I just don't. I don't know how long they're gonna try to do this 2 big lineup without having one of those guys be a perimeter player. It's just my take on it. Ooh, this is like another great question. You guys are bringing good questions tonight. I love it. This comes from Game Nuts. How long do you see Marcus Sasser staying on the team?
I've said it before. I think Marcus Sasser was drafted to replace Alec Burks. I think he will. I think we're going to see him through his rookie year, through his rookie contract. I mean, and that's tough. That is tough. I would say, man, I don't want to think about this. I thought,
okay.
No, I think he'll be here through the 4 years of his rookie deal.
Mm-hmm.
But then I could see the Pistons trade him while his name is hot because he's a little bit older. I think he's 24 years old right now. Maybe 23. So 23 years old. He's 23 years old. He's a little bit older for a rookie. And at the end of his rookie contract, he'll be 26. So kind of in the middle of his prime, I guess you could say. I could see I could see him at least being here through the first 4 years. And then Pistons trying to trade him away.
I think he's going to be here for as long as Monty Williams is the coach. Because Monty Williams is really high on Marcus Sasser, from my understanding, with the draft evaluation process, even though he did get hired late through the head coaching hiring process. I think Monty Williams really likes him as a player. And you saw the performance he put on against the Thunder. I've told you, he reminds me so much of Terry Rozier. Like, there's just so much in there. It's just like you watch them and they're so similar. And I think he's the type of guard that you could have off your bench, maybe in the long-term future. Maybe he's your backup point guard to back up Cade. You just have an instant spark plug off the bench that could get you 15 a night easily. And I think that's the type of role that he's probably going to have on this team. I think he'll make it throughout his rookie contract, and they'll probably extend him long term. I don't think you trade up for a guy in the first round if you don't think he's going to be a part of your long term future.
Well, think about it. If Cade, Asar, Jaden Ivey, and Duren all work out, that's a lot of money to play with. Mm-hmm. And then you have Marcus Sasser, where it's like he's a backup. He's the backup point guard. There's no room for him to be a starter. He wants to grow as a player. I could see it working out like how it worked out for Terry Rozier, where he was traded from Boston to the Charlotte Hornets because I believe they couldn't afford to keep him. But I mean, there's also a world where maybe he starts alongside Cade Cunningham and Asar, and Jaden Ivey gets traded. Like, dude, it's crazy. It's so much fun to have this many good young players on the team.
Yeah, I think if they were to extend him, let's just say he doesn't get a whole lot of playing time, maybe you do an extension that's similar to a Peyton Pritchard, like 4 years, $30 million. Like, I don't think you're going to have to break unless Sasser just comes out and averaging like 20, 30 points. I don't think you're going to have to give him a max rookie extension, and you don't have to give these guys max rookie extensions. I mean, he kind of looked like what Naz Reid got this offseason. It wasn't a max extension, but he obviously got paid. I don't really think the Pistons are really worried about that right now. It's because the only extension that you should be worried about is Cade Cunningham, because he's the next one to come up.
Well, I mean, Terry Rozier, he went from 2 points a game to 5 to 11 to 9, and then he gets traded to Charlotte where he breaks out for 18 a game. It could be a similar situation like that where he's not getting enough minutes, where he may not be averaging 20, but you're like, man, Terry Rozier, he gives you an efficient 9 points per game and 4 assists. If he was a starting point guard, he might be an all-star on some other team. It could be like that. Or you even know Marcus Sasser's like, look, I'm better than a backup. I'm better than the minimum extension you gave me. Trade me so I can go out and get as much money as I possibly can. Could be like that. Not everybody's willing to sacrifice money for the better of the team.
Just listening to him in interviews, he's so humble. Like, he seems like a guy that is okay starting or being that 12th man off the bench. He just doesn't really seem like a guy that has a whole lot of ego. And I don't think it's going to be like a Terry Rozier situation because the Hornets will pay anybody, and obviously they'll let anyone play regardless of what they do, outside of Kai Jones, I guess. Kai Jones went like crazy, but Miles Bridges can still practice in their facility. I don't know. Charlotte, like I said last year, Charlotte Hornets are a dumpster fire.
Charlotte Hornets, if you need help with mental health, we're not the team for you.
Oh man, like I think the narrative is going to change where they said Detroit going to Detroit, playing for the Pistons is where your career dies. Playing for the Hornets is where your career dies.
You want to earn a paycheck and nobody cares about your past. Charlotte is your team.
Oh man. We don't have any more Q&A questions, but we have been on for an hour and a half. So if there's anything you want to talk about before we wrap up, let me know.
No, not this week. I mean, really got much more. There's some topics that I want to have saved for later on before the regular season starts. So I'm going to keep them in the vault until another episode.
Gotcha. Well, why don't you tell the people where they can find the podcast and where they can support it?
All right. Thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk Podcast. Do us a favor. Go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
See you guys next week.